New rig, road trip ready. And that sounds easy to say. It is easy to say. It is quite another thing to do it. I spent most of the summer of 2025 working on this particular issue, getting a new rig. This is the new rig, and I'm going to show it to you in this episode as completely as I can. I'm going to tell you a little about what we're going to talk about in this episode. I call this rig Unit 11 because that is what it is called. And it was quite the job to get it, and quite the job to get it ready, get it licensed. This rig required a lot of me. So without further ado, let me just tell you that this is a 1999 Freightliner FL70 fire truck. It was designed as a first responder EMT truck. And it had 14,600 miles on it when I got it. It has a Cummins 8.3 diesel. It is a lot. The truck is a lot. We did not know how heavy it was when we bought it. We did not know that air brakes create an issue when we bought it. And the issue is that you have to have a CDL to drive it. So among other things, just getting to buying the truck and then getting the truck, I couldn't drive it for almost a month. And there were a lot of other issues, which I'll just sort of refer to in this sort of rambling episode because there's a lot to talk about. As I sum it all up, I guess I would say that this has been an education for me and a lesson on, if you will, in the modern parlance, manifesting. I've wanted a new rig for quite a while, and the old rig, the 2004 7.3 diesel ambulance, was great. It had my logo on the side, all of the things, but it had over 250,000 miles on it, and it just was tired. I still have it. It is in the barn, and we're going to keep it. I don't know what we're going to do with it, but we're going to keep it. And I had to say goodbye to that vehicle. I wanted something that was larger. I wanted something that I could have a bed in. I wanted something that was going to last, but at the same time, it needed to be a strong platform. There are a lot of pieces to this. Among them, I'm trying to incorporate all the lessons I learned nomading in the ambulance for 10 years. Certainly full-time in the last 5 years, but almost full-time for 10 years. I got it in 2015. So it had seen better days, that's for sure. The bumper was rusted off and back. There were tons of other things with it. And of course, when I got it, it had 112,000 miles. This truck has lived in a fire station most of its life. It is actually in pristine condition. 14,000 miles, 1,600 hours on this vehicle. But I needed a CDL to drive it, so I had to get that. And there were a number of other things. As my friend Peter put it, this truck is demanding a lot of you. And it will be an education, and it has been. I will be really revealing more about this truck and the adventures of this truck, so this isn't the only time you're going to see it. It does not have my logo on it. We'll talk about why it doesn't have the logo on it. The other thing is, I said in the last podcast, which was quite some time ago, I said we're working on two things that require a lot, two very difficult things to do. So one of them was the rig and getting the rig road trip ready. The second one involves doing something for the audience of the podcasts going back to 2009, and also the YouTube channel and the podcasts currently. Since I've been doing YouTube, I've also been continuing the audio podcasts at thebobdavispodcast.com. There's going to be some changes related to that, and I will talk about all of that in this episode. One of the things that I like to do personally is be an individual and get things done on my own. The issue with that is this turned out to be a job which I couldn't do alone. I wanted a bus. I wanted a school bus. I love schoolies, and I thought, wow, I'm going to get a school bus. And I had very specific requirements for said school bus. It had to have a Cummins 6.7 or 8.3. I was later convinced that a 5.9 would be fine if it was in good shape. And it needed an Allison transmission. I didn't want a DT466 or a Max Force. I didn't want a Caterpillar. I didn't want a John Deere, propane bus, and on it goes. So I had very specific requirements. The other one was it had to be roughly 30 feet long. I didn't want a bus that was bigger than 30 feet for a lot of reasons, one of which is 30 feet is the limit for national parks and forest services and things of that nature. So that's what I wanted. I found the process, and I don't want to get into it too deeply. I'm sure I'll talk about this a lot in future episodes. I found the process of looking for a bus to be tedious and highly disappointing, in fact, depressing. I realized that you're not going to find the unicorn school bus is often been referred to as an A3 Cummins 3000 series Allison transmission 30-foot short bus, which is a Bluebird, generally speaking. And it has been referred to as a unicorn. You're going to have a hard time finding that for a lot of reasons. I later became convinced that a 6.7 would be better because of mileage, fuel mileage and so forth. But then I started to read about all the issues with 6.7 Cummins and decided it got crazy. And I realized I needed help. I tried looking online. I tried looking at Facebook. I tried looking at auction sites. And I just had no idea what I was doing. So I turned to my friend Ed Johnson. Ed, who is better known as Ed Wolf, had this company called exgovernmentcars.com, which they were one of my first clients, and he sold Crown Vics and Dodge Chargers and things like that, ex-police cars. And I think I had 3 Crown Vics, and Ed sold probably a couple of Crown Vics a week off of the Bob Davis podcast. It was probably the most effective advertising that I ever did on the audio podcast. And we got to be really good friends for a lot of reasons. And I was going to go out in my car. When I decided I was going to be a nomad, I decided, well, I'm going to go out in my car. And Ed was like, we're going to get you an ambulance. And he got me the ambulance that I spoke of earlier.
So, how did you convince that Bob Davis character to get this thing?
I tricked him. It was just an upgrade from his other one. The natural progression.
It is the natural progression, absolutely.
I finally called Ed and said, you have to help me. I'm looking for a school bus. Now, unbeknownst to me, he was like, why do you want a school bus? You're crazy. Why would you want a school bus? But he didn't say anything about it. He just pitched right in. And we proceeded to, gallivant around the Minneapolis-St. Paul area and western Wisconsin looking for a bus. And I don't really have a lot of video from that because I was looking at buses. But I have a litany of stories about the buses. And the buses I looked at, the best example is one of them was a beautiful blue bus. And I thought, oh, this is going to be great. And I went out, and one of the things people do to buses is they will take the roof out, and so you're down to the basic frame. When they do that, they ruin a good portion of the bus. The reason they do it is then they can insulate and put the roof in and everything else. But that system in buses, that roof provides a level of insulation for the bus, and it also provides for ventilation. So when you take that out, you start to cause all kinds of problems. The other thing is in the state of Minnesota and also in the state of Wisconsin, if you want to, in many states, if you want to get the frame reclassified as an RV, you have to take the lights off, you have to have it painted, and so forth. So this blue bus I was walking to the back, and what I've always heard about buses is that they get very rusty. And I saw a spot of rust, and I thought, oh, this is, and this was a Facebook Marketplace thing. And they wanted $5,000. No, he wanted $5,000 for the bus. I thought, well, that's perfect because my budget was roughly $30,000 to do all this. I put my foot down on the rust to see how deep it was, and my foot literally went through the floor. And I looked down, and I saw Ed looking at the tires, trying to figure out what the date on the tires was. And he looked up at me, and he said, let's go. And so we said, hey, man, thank you. Good luck. And I think he ended up selling it for $4,000. God help the person that bought it. But it did have a 6.7 diesel and an Allison 2000 series transmission, so I was pumped on that front. But no, I didn't buy that bus. To make a long story short, I was sitting at my campsite one day in the camp office, as I referred to the boathouse, and I get an email from Ed, or I guess it was a text from Ed, and he said, hey, take a look at this. And we were on the Minnesota auction site. And there was a red fire truck that was a first responder truck similar to this one. And it was only 24 feet long, but it had an 8.3, obviously a 3000 series Allison transmission. And it had 15,000 miles on it. And I looked at it, and he goes, I was really mad at him. And he said, you really should get this bus. This is the bus, meaning this is the vehicle. But I said, I'm not going to, the Mobile Podcast Command originally was about 22 feet long. I said, I can't do anything with a truck that's 24 feet long. It was a short truck, fire truck. And he said he was very disappointed. I said, why don't you buy it? He goes, I'm not going to do anything with it, but you should buy it. They wanted the bid. The reserve was $30,000 for this thing. It was a beautiful truck, I will say. I should have bought it because it was a beautiful truck. I should have both of them. But anyway, I said no. And we went on looking at buses and arguing about buses and just being generally upset. I went to one of these, I started going around to bus dealerships, and I realized, and I'm going to say this even though it's legally not a scam, these bus companies, they buy buses, they lease them to a school district, and then when they reach a certain amount of mileage, they pull them off and they sell them for well above the bus Blue Book value. But I thought I would go to a dealership. So I found a nice 32-foot bus. It had all the things I wanted, 6.7 diesel, Cummins, and an Allison transmission, blah, 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 blah. $71,000 for this bus. And I was so disappointed. I looked at about 100 buses at the end of the day. None of them were in any way satisfying. So Ed then sent me another link, and he goes, look at this. And I looked at it, and it was this truck. And I go, that's the one, because I thought the inside of it was going to be wide open. There would be a clean slate inside. And as you can see if you're watching on YouTube, it basically had an opening for 6 guys to sit, and then a long hallway, and it was a fire command vehicle and a first responding unit. It had the jaws of life. It had a pneumatic tube, a pneumatic tool of some kind. It has 220 and 110 portable power. It has 6 or 7 outlets on the outside of the vehicle that when you're on the power takeoff, which is a 4,000 watt generator on the engine, that it delivers power, puts out a huge amount of voltage. I later learned from my solar guy. It had a lot of features that I wanted. Plus it had 14,000 miles on it. So I was like, let's go look at it. We went out to this municipality in Minnesota, just a rural municipality, ex-urban place where all the houses have 3 acres and there's a lot of rich people that live there. And we looked at it, and it was pristine. I mean, you could literally eat off the engine block. It was that clean. No rust, not a scintilla of rust. except for maybe a little bit of surface rust on, the back bumper and on the leaf springs, things of that nature. But basically, it was basically pristine. So I go, okay, we're going to bid on it. And we ended up paying the reserve. I'm not going to tell you how much it cost. It wasn't as much as the other one. And all said and done, I'm way over budget on this. Not grossly over budget, but over budget. But I guess I expected that, and I'll explain why as we go through it. As I talk about this bus in future episodes, you'll get more details on it. I keep calling it a bus. It's a fire truck. But as I talk about this truck in future episodes, I'll get into it a little deeper. What I talk about is the joy and enlightenment that comes from travel. Really, it's about the heart. There was a lot that had to be done. My basic design idea was I wanted a bed in the back, and it was going to be like a Murphy bed that had clamshells. And I wanted a plywood floor and a table, and I wanted it all to be stained as brown, as dark brown as we could get it. And I hired a guy who does a lot of work around western Wisconsin, and a contractor, carpenter. He's a craftsman. Jeremiah Lunsman, who I think it's his cousin Tim, did an incredible job on this truck. From start to finish. There was really not. I mean, we're talking about maybe 75 square feet of wood to do all of it. We had a bunch of cedar from one of the cabins here on the property that we tore down and rebuilt. So we have a cedar-lined cabinet basically for the bed in back. I may end up putting more cedar in here because it smells really good and it's wonderful to keep the bugs out. So that part I did. The other part that I found a great deal of difficulty with was getting solar put on. I ended up having to go to Madison, Wisconsin, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on in this episode so I can show you what the guys at Mad Mob Solar did and really compliment them on the work because they just did an incredible job. That was just organizing all the things that had to be done was a big part of the job. But the real difficulty was we had some problems getting the title for this truck. Then I had some problems licensing the truck. And as I said earlier, I'm not going to tell you what I did to get this licensed as a non-commercial truck in the state of Minnesota. I wanted to do it in Wisconsin, but I had to do it in Minnesota for various reasons. But I'm not going to say how because I don't necessarily want to share that. It's one of the huge impediments to putting something together without reclassifying it as an RV. In order to get this reclassified as an RV, you have to literally change the nature of the chassis legally with the state. That's true in Wisconsin, and I'm sure it's true in Minnesota as well. What does that mean? It means that RVs are basically chassised as recreational vehicles, so they have no problem with the license. In order to do that, I would have to pull all the lights off of this truck, all the ambulance and all the fire truck stuff off of it, and paint it. I didn't want to do any of that, and I didn't want to turn this into an RV. So I had a lot of problems. Then I had to get a CDL. That took me, so I had to do the written portion, or what they call the EDLT, and then I had to take the driver training. I did that, fortunately, right near where I was in St. Croix Valley. So I went to St. Croix Valley Trucking School. I did the EDLT from some place online, and I spent 3 weeks in the boathouse just going crazy, taking test after test after test, hundreds of tests, and I aced the written portion of the CDL test and I got one wrong on the air brakes portion of the CDL test. So I studied my ass off, and I was really proud of that. Then I had to go to driving school. Keep in mind, as this is going on, I am freaking out because the weather is cooling off pretty quickly. I'm in Mississippi right now as I record this. It's 80 degrees. We had our last 80-degree day in Wisconsin roughly October 5th or 6th or something like that. And I remember saying to friends that were up at the lake, this is the last summer day. And we're well into fall, and it got colder and colder and colder to the point where I acclimated to colder weather, and now I'm hot when it's 65 degrees. So I'm a typical Minnesotan in that respect, or a typical Wisconsinite, where you get acclimated to cold weather and then you can't stand it when it's hot. So I'll do everything I can do to address that issue. But I wanted to get out of there. Actually, I wanted to get out of there shortly after Labor Day, but I ended up having to stay until November 3rd, and that's when I went to Madison to get the solar put on, because I just could not get that done. I wanted to do the solar first and then do all the other stuff. I also needed a diesel heater, and I needed a diesel heater installed, which turned into a cluster. Beep. And I'm going to have to get that reinstalled outside the truck in a cabinet, but that's another story entirely. The one chapter of this build still has to go on. So, Jeremiah couldn't get to this because he was working in my brother-in-law's house. So Jeremiah had to figure out how to shoehorn in this truck and do this job. We ended up having to finish the staining because it was too cold in Pat's barn, which is a beautiful barn. I've had shots on Instagram of his barn before. We had to put, and I was like, they are harvesting, and he has quite a large acreage to pull corn off of. And they'd gotten the soybeans out earlier, and they were getting the corn out, the feed corn, and he had 4 or 5 guys and the combine and everything at the combines and all the things. When you think barn, this is a barn with a gigantic heated floor, where he parks these gigantic combines and everything. So we had to park over there to get the thing stained, and we did it, and we got it stained. I got the diesel heater installed incorrectly, as it turns out, but that's another story. And then I left on November 3rd, headed for Madison, and I had to take the truck down. This is the first I'd driven it. By now I had gotten the CDL, on October, I think it was Halloween, or the October 29th, and I have 100 stories about getting the CDL.
Just completed a round trip to Madison starting at 5 o'clock this morning. Well, we haven't completed it yet. We're on Route 8. If you've ever traveled in southern Wisconsin on the way to Minneapolis-St. Paul from, let's say, someplace like Chicago, you know how much more populated the southern part of the state is. This is the northern part of the state. And this is the new Unit 11. Midnight cruise, coming back home because I got to go up to Siren to get my diesel heater installed, then the solar on the way out in Madison. So today I had to go up to Madison to sit down with the solar guy and figure out what we're going to do, which we didn't really come to any resolution, but we think we do. This thing is a beast. Very complicated. There's lots of systems to deal with. But it's a great vehicle.
And so I literally got my CDL in 78 hours from these guys at St. Croix Falls Trucking School, St. Croix Valley Trucking School, and it was tremendous. Really a great experience. A lot of fun with the guys from Boston and surrounding areas, and a lot of fun with the instructors, but always professional. And I did really well on the driver's training, so that was pretty neat. So I had this CDL, so I think it was Halloween. I drove down. No, it was November 1st, something like that. I drove down to Madison and made a run down and a run back to just test out the truck and have John from Mad Bob Solar take a look at it and try to figure out what we were going to do and how we were going to get all these requirements that I had for solar in this thing. And I'll talk about that as well a little bit later on. Anyway, those were just some of the difficult hurdles. The most difficult stuff was getting the title. There were some problems because they hadn't sold a fire truck for a while, and so they didn't have the clear title. We had to get that resolved by going to different DMVs. I tried Wisconsin, and then they wanted to send me to Eau Claire, where all the trucks go. And I ended up going to the DMV in Minnesota. I went to a state DMV. They helped me out tremendously and got all that taken care of. And then, guess what? I got the title, and we managed to get it licensed as a non-commercial truck. So that was great. And it was time to sort of head out. And this thing, getting it road ready, was quite a challenge for a lot of reasons. I mentioned that my friend Peter, a lot of you guys came over from the Peter Centinello video channel. He said he was like, I told him I was getting a new rig, and he goes, I don't know, man. That's mobile podcast command is pretty cool, and I don't think you should do that. I think you should just get it up to road ready again and just stay with the ambulance. And when I sent him a picture of this thing, he goes, oh yeah, now I understand. But then I didn't do a video for a while, and this is the first video I've done. He was like, what's up with no video? And I was like, well, there's a lot that has to be done. And he goes, Bob, the truck is demanding an awful lot of. It's demanding a lot of you, but it's going to be worth it. And he was so right. So I had a lot of help. I had help from Ed Johnson. I had help from the family. I think I asked an awful lot of my brother-in-law, Pat, and everybody else, John, Bridget, Jeremiah, and Tim. You guys did a great job. And Mad Mob Solar in Madison, I can't say enough about. And I'll just very quickly talk about that, because that was the last thing and why I didn't want an RV. I have learned in over 10 years of nomading, driving around the country and doing things, that you do not want an RV. I can't tell you how many times my friends and I have been sitting in the desert watching RVs bottom out, watching RVs not have enough clearance, watching RVs with things that break, generators that don't work, batteries that run down, and on and on and on. You don't need all the stuff in an RV. You don't need the curtains on the windows. You don't need a 4-burner stove and an oven. You don't need a massive microwave. You don't need a marble floor. You don't need, somebody's old bed that you bought the Class C from, or your grandpa's old V because you bought or you borrowed the 99 Tioga Class C or whatever. You don't need that stuff. What you need is a system that is going to work. You need power up the butt. You need you need power. You need and you need to have a lot of storage, and you need a platform that is strong and that is going to have clearance. This has 22.5 11Rs on it. There's plenty of clearance underneath this truck. An 8.3 diesel has an enormous amount of torque and power, and it will last a long time. It's metal and wood inside. And I had a person, my friend Robin from Chicago, who is originally from Mobile, Alabama. She's a nut, But she got in this truck, and she worked at Vogue. I mean, she's very fashion forward. She's an art dealer. She's very artistic. And she gets in the truck and she goes, "Bob Davis, do not mess with this aluminum." The whole truck was aluminum. I put a level of insulation in on the floor. I put plywood over that, and the clamshell bed is insulated both on the bottom and on the doors that open up to the air, and so I had to put a floor in with insulation, but I kept the aluminum. And I kept it because Robin told me to, because she said this is the hippest thing that you could possibly have, is all this aluminum. So yeah, and so here's the thing about the solar. I want enough power. I was going to originally do 4 marine batteries, so you get 400 to 150 if you're lucky amp hour marine batteries. And John talked me out of that, so I have 2 300 amp hour Epic lithium batteries. They're not cheap. I have a 3,000 watt Victron inverter, a Victron charge controller, and a number of other pieces. I wanted to be able to charge the truck batteries when I'm boondocking. There were a lot of issues with this truck because it is a fire truck. It's complicated, and John at Mad Mob Solar figured it out. I sent him all the schematics. I have all the schematics for the truck. I have a shunt which will charge the batteries. I can actually charge the batteries if I have to off of the power takeoff on this vehicle, and we tested it to make sure I can charge my power station by just plugging it in. So, I mentioned at the top of this episode that there were 2 tasks that I had to do. The thing about difficult things is they reach out and grab you, and they're difficult for a reason. So you have to do the work, and maybe you might be upset, and you might say, this is too hard, too much work. I had 2 things that I wanted to do this summer, which were almost impossible, it seemed. There were just roadblocks upon roadblocks upon roadblocks. I wanted a bus. I ended up with a fire truck. I wanted a 6.7 diesel. Originally, I wanted an 8.3. I ended up with an 8.3. That tells you a little bit about how powerful manifesting and imagining what you would have is. And of course, I just imagined myself driving this bus with an 8.3, and now I have a fire truck with an 8.3. Well, so it demands a little bit more fuel, but I don't care. But there were two things I had to do. One was get the rig and get it road ready. The second was to do something for longtime viewers, listeners, and people who have contributed to the Bob Davis podcast for many years. And that is that the BobDavisPodcasts.com is officially the BobDavisPodcast.org. It is a nonprofit. My accountant said, "Gee, that's a good idea. It's a nonprofit anyway." Now, I haven't completed at the time of this recording all of the things I have to do with the website and everything, but if you make contributions to the Bob Davis podcast, donations, literally, they are now tax deductible. All you have to do is you're going to get a receipt when you go on PayPal and make a contribution. Just write on the receipt when you print it, the BobDavisPodcast.org. It's a 501c3 educational nonprofit, and there are some rules, and I want to talk about the rules a little bit. First of all, we have a board. I will be doing a video I will be doing an episode to talk about the board, and I'm answerable to the board and to myself as well. There are some rules which I was following anyway before I did this, and the rules are that, and I will follow them on the YouTube channel as well, not just on the podcast. But the The rules are that as an educational C3, it is not political, decidedly. If I do any stuff that is political, then I will have to, be very assiduously focused on presenting both sides of the story. Now, I don't talk about politics in these podcasts. I'm actually not interested in politics at all anymore, number one. And number two, travel has such a high vibe that messing it up with a political vibe the two are like oil and water. They really don't combine. So there's not going to be a lot of talk about politics. But occasionally I'll go through a place like Cairo, whatever it is, Illinois, and talk about the poverty or something. Or I'll go through a town and ask what happened here. I will have to make a little bit more of an effort to talk about, or at least to say, well, maybe there's two sides of the story. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 sides of the story. It's an educational because the goal is to educate viewers and listeners of the podcasts about the joy and the enlightenment of travel. That is the main focus of this podcast going forward. And that includes the BobDavisPodcast.org. There is no logo on this truck. And the reason is that this cannot be a commercial venue. And they are very, very serious about that. When they give you a license for a non-commercial truck, they are serious that it has to be non-commercial. So my logo is not on this truck and won't be on this truck. And those are just a few, not all, but those are a few of the rules related to the Bob Davis Podcast being a nonprofit. But many people have helped me over the years, and they've freely given to me. And sometimes it isn't a lot. Brandon Sabata, Mike Murphy, Katie Davis, Judy Murphy, Lisa Delahunt, Mindy Collins. There's a long list, and I don't have the whole list here. But there's a lot of people who helped me from here on, and really from basically, I think it was late August 2025 on. Your donations are fully tax deductible. So if you make $10,000, God forbid, that is a fully tax deductible donation. There will be no more advertising on the podcast. I suppose I could say made possible by. So there's no more 36 Lynn. Thank you, Lonnie, for all of your support. There's no more xgovernmentcars.com. Thank you, Ed, for all of your help, especially with the stuff we talked about in this podcast. No more banners on the website, and no more of Bob Davis trying to sell a podcast. So it is listener supported fully. The YouTube channel is part of the .com. So the YouTube channel is monetized, and that will go to the .com, which I still have as a business. It is still a nonprofit, and there is an actual nonprofit as well. So if you make contributions to BobDavisPodcast.org, and I will talk more about this in the future, you are contributing to this this overall effort to educate people about travel, educate people about nomad life, such as it is, and it isn't giving you pointers. It's not about that. It's about the heart. It's about the enlightenment of travel and the joy of travel. It's not telling you how to do it. It's not encouraging you to do it. Some people do it 2 times a year. Some people do it full time. I don't care. This is about my travel stories, and it's about my joy, and hopefully you can be inspired and get your joy out of it as well. I'm really happy that I managed to get the nonprofit, thanks to my accountant, Carol Gatlin, who had to do all the work. I appreciate it, and I'm sure listeners appreciate, too, having the tax deduction. So that's all for this. Going forward, there's going to be a lot more to talk about. I'm in Mississippi as we speak, where it's 80 degrees, which is hard to believe. And everything, all systems are go. The truck is just fantastic, and thank you for watching. And thanks for joining me for this episode. And for this podcast 11, what is it? It's 1165. Bye-bye.